Okay. Hey, Shereem, how are you?
I'm well, Doug. Doug or Douglas?
Douglas, please.
Douglas, no worries. I apologize. I'm happy to be here, Douglas, and thanks for the invitation.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's nice to have you with us. So, today we're going to be talking about your book that you co authored with Timothy Fields. The book is called The Black Family's Guide to College Admissions. And right off the bat, my question is why would it be different for black families than anybody else?
Absolutely. I think it's a fair question, and it's a question we get quite often. Um, the impetus behind the book really stemmed from hearing in 2020 when we were all kind of watching the racial reckoning of America, thinking that we had made so much progress. But then we saw everything from George Floyd to Breonna Taylor. We saw a lot of stuff in the news as we all sat home in the pandemic, and maybe we hadn't made as much progress as we thought. And Timothy and I, both having worked in college admissions, came up with the idea of most college admissions books that are well marketed and very popular are written by white authors and primarily white men. I could argue that one of the best books was actually written by a white woman and wasn't as popular as some of the other books are. So Tim and I both have a unique perspective. He went to a historically black college and university. I went to a predominantly white institution, Wesleyan University in Connecticut. We had this dynamic of what were our experiences, being in our different college experiences, but then what are our professional experiences? Him working on the college admission side, me helping families navigate the college admission process. So the black families have the options, right, of historically black college universities, predominantly white institutions that are, well integrated. But how are some of the cultural, financial, I guess, return on investment ideas that black families are considering as they consider higher education? Once upon a time, if it was almost status quo that all students would try to navigate the college admissions process and go to college and live a middle class life. I don't know if that's the case, regardless of race. I'm not sure everyone wants to go to college, or if they do, what kind of colleges are best for them.
Back in the days when civil rights, in the early 60s, when Jim Crow was being challenged and Martin Luther King was a dominant figure in the civil rights movement, one of the arguments from the white segregationists was that it was beneficial for black people to go to an all black university because they didn't have to deal with the racism that they would get from the whites if they tried to integrate into a white college. Because you said that Tim went to a predominantly black school and you went to a predominantly white school, does it matter at this point?
I mean, it's an individual process, right? So it's an individualized preference for each kind of student, depending on what they want to do, how they want to spend their 4 years of college, what they want to do professionally. Now, I would tend to think, particularly socioeconomically, most, not all, but most predominantly white institutions have more resources, more money in order to hire, not just established researchers, but have better facilities, things of that nature. Now, I completely, dare I say, agree with some of the segregationalists from the civil rights era of that. There was a time in which the last thing a black student may want to do is go to a predominantly white institution, particularly by themselves, where they would often feel isolated or alone and could be ostracized. Historically black college universities are often called places where black students can be celebrated, not tolerated. And that's a deep comment that, although I think it has changed or evolved over time, it is still the ethos of many of those schools where they believe that they really pour into the students to make sure that they graduate because they know how challenging college and young adult life may be. But it really is at this point in 2022, or when I went to college in 1992, that each student needs something different. Each college can offer students something different. I do not regret going to a predominantly white institution for a variety of reasons: proximity to home. I'm from New York City. There aren't historically black colleges. I guess Lincoln and Cheney State aren't that far in Pennsylvania, but I wanted to go to school in New England, and there are no historically black colleges in New England.
Why did you guys decide to write this book?
We thought that we have a very unique voice, given our unique, the academic, personal, and professional lives. Again, we broke the book up into three sections: context, which really emphasizes conversations that a lot of Black families are having now about college and college admissions, about education. Is it something they want to invest a lot of money in? Is it something that's going to benefit their child? Should their child go to HBCU or PWI? If so, what kinds of schools should they be looking for and why? So that context is based upon a conversation. The second part is called X factors. X factors that, because of affirmative action, which may or may not remain, how that impacts elements of the college application process, athletics and arts, which is, again, an X factor. My son was a stud baseball player. He applied to college, and that was an X factor for him. He got into schools he might not have got into had he not been a stud baseball player. And then the last piece is called process. And the process is pretty much the same regardless of race. So what we want to do is give Black families something that they don't have, which is a book that speaks directly to them. It's almost like what's that show? There's a lot of shows that have targeted markets, or a lot of books that have targeted markets. We felt that Black families needed something that would specifically target their concerns, the considerations, and obviously the process.
I want to hit on one of your talking points here. It says, some of the biggest mistakes Black families make when it comes to applying to college. Can you give us an example or two of that?
Oof, that's part of the book, isn't it?
Well, it's on your sheet for your talking points, so.
It is, and something I haven't read in a while. So one of the biggest mistakes Black families make is oftentimes not understanding how early this starts. Tim and I are firm believers that the college admissions process, college exposure, college awareness process can begin as early as elementary school. Then the college admission process, or at least taking courses or being involved in activities that can later impact the college admission process, often begins as early as junior high school. We have found through surveys, through research, that many Black families don't understand that the classes that you take in 7th and 8th grade, particularly math and foreign language, dictate what your child takes in 9th, 10th, 11th, and ultimately 12th grade. Certain colleges, the Ivy League, aren't going to look at students who don't take, high-level math and science or high-level foreign language. Calculus is, I won't say a requirement, but it's expected. So we want to make sure that everyone understands that highly selective schools, no matter regardless of race, are expecting certain courses to be on the transcript, or certain level of courses, I should say. And sometimes that information, there's a gap of who understands how that process works and who doesn't. And we wanted to kind of fill in that information gap as much as we possibly could.
Do you think race should be a considering factor when colleges are considering applicants for admission?
Absolutely, I do. I think students are benefit from having the opportunity of having a lot of diversity on campus. I think classrooms are enriched when you have a multitude of perspective. I think too much of one thing usually doesn't inform you the most. So how do you do that? You consider race, socioeconomic, you consider gender, you consider geography. You want to try to bring people together from different walks of life that can ultimately enrich a college campus so we can all learn from each other. I believe that in order for our society to evolve, we have to learn how to get along better than we have. Like you said, we've been in existence for so long, and I think we're still stagnant in so many places, that when race is considered in college admissions, I think there's more benefits than not. I understand that some people feel that it's unfair. Well, I can say legacy admissions are unfair. And just because what your parents went to college doesn't mean you should get into college. I feel like sometimes institutional advancement or development cases are unfair. Just because your parents have more wealth than the next person and can make us a larger donation doesn't mean that you should be admitted to college. I could argue that athletics is unfair. Just because you can run, jump, throw, ice hockey, skate, whatever, play tennis better than the next person, that maybe you shouldn't have the same spot in the college because you're going to make the college more money. So college admissions is inherently unfair for all those reasons besides race that I think people don't think about as much because it's not as glaring in their face.
I would agree with you, and I think that's a good point, that people seem to focus just on the racial issues, but you're right, there's all kinds of other criteria. Let's see, one more of your talking points, and then we're going to have to wind this down. What college will look like for students in 20 years?
Woo! Douglas, how much time do you got?
About 3 minutes.
Understood. I really believe that college is really going through a boiling point. college is expensive. You know, some of the most selective private schools in the country are 75 grand a year. That's ridiculous. For someone to pay $300,000 for their kid, for their 18 to 22-year-old kid who probably doesn't even know what they want to do with the rest of their life, is going to put somebody in the hole. Even if you're a wealthy person, no one wants to write a $300,000 check, you know, for your kid to play video games and, you know, take classes twice a day. So the bottom line is I think college has to change. I think as we experienced, particularly during the pandemic, we've all gone through this online learning evolution. I think that's what it's going to look like more and more. My own son, who goes to college on campus, still takes classes online via Zoom. And I'm like, that's cheating. You're there, go. But that's what the teachers are doing now. So I think in 20 years, do I think college will exist? Yes. Do I think that they will have to scale down their prices and consider some of the facilities? I think we have to, because it's come to the point where enrollment is down. People are reconsidering what is the purpose of. Do I need to go to college to live a middle class or affluent life? Those are questions that are real for all different races that I hope, you know, as my children get older, we start to answer those questions, because I don't want to give anyone $300,000 for them to go to college. I'd rather give them $300,000 to start a business. So I think that's where we're at, this juxtaposition of what's best for the future.
Well, I think that colleges need to be a little bit more balanced. If you have a degree from Harvard, it's going to take you a lot further potentially than a degree from Joe's University in Missouri.
Yes, and you know, I mean, I understand that basic assumption. I do. I've met Harvard guys who wash dishes for a living, and again, it blows my mind.
Well, I have too.
You know,
yeah.
You know, but again, it's all about personal motivation. I mean, so I get it, and I'm not saying I disagree with it, but even that is shifting. 30 years ago, I think it was much more kind of, if you go to this school, you can get this kind of job and live this kind of life. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case as much anymore.
Well, I hope you're right, because I think that just in itself is incredibly unfair. And I've always advocated for a sort of federal university, like the United States University or something like that, where no matter where you are, the price is set, the degree, it has value as much as any good state school. The curriculum would be the same across the board for everybody. And, you know, rather than have these sort of peer levels of universities.
I couldn't have said it better.
Nobody wants to listen to me on that one, but I've been saying that.
I'll get you a bullhorn, Douglas. I'll get you a bullhorn.
Yeah, and a bullhorn and a soapbox, and I'll go stand in Central Park. Yeah. Well, Shereem, we got to wind this down. Thanks so much for coming on. Do you have a website you want to give out?
Thank you so much again for having us. We're really excited. The book, again, is called The Black Family's Guide to College Admissions, a conversation about education, parenting, and race. Our website, for those who are looking at my shirt, says understandingthechoices.com. We have a wealth of resources. We have a podcast called Application to Admission. Obviously, the book is being sold there. You can learn more about myself, Shereem Herndon-Brown, and my co-author, Timothy L. Fields. And we're just out to share information with everyone who wants to hear, educators, allies, Black families. We want to make sure that people get the information that they need in order to support Black students primarily, but also that learn more about college universities that they may not have learned otherwise.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. It was nice meeting you, and best of luck with the book.
Thanks so much, sir. Thank you. Have a great day.